So, guys, Datti Ahmed has hardly been in the public space, since he came on Channels Television to grant an interview that caused uproar. I love Datti Ahmed because, he's a man that speaks gently, but I tell you, his words are weighty. His words are very weighty. So, guys, in this occasion, Datti Ahmed was present and he kept, laying emphasis on our democracy. And he keeps talking about our democracy. He keeps talking about our constitution. That these two things work together. Without the constitution, there is no democracy. And if you don't obey the constitution, you don't claim to have any democracy. Please don't forget that Mr. Dele Farotimi was equally present at this occasion. David Hundeyin was equally present. And you are going to listen to all of them speak. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell. Please give this video a like so that YouTube can recommend it to others. And let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you.
I always use that word, indomitable leader. He's no other person than Senator Yusuf Datti Baba Ahmed. Sir, you want to stay there, sir? Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the high table, fellow Nigerians, dear organizers, all protocols respectfully observed. It is great pleasure to be here, even greater pleasure to feel the kind of love for our nation that you're displaying here and now. I'm only here to encourage your sense of nationalism. I'm here to ask you to keep up the love for our dear country. While the speakers will do the speaking, I will not have much to say. As you very well know, very little I say, or the very little I have seen before now has rattled the system more than anything else. So out of respect for those who have advised before now, I would just like to encourage those who are going to speak, except maybe just making one or two notes that are fundamental. I have been saying that democracy, as you put it here, the theme, democracy belongs to the people who can practice it. If you can't practice delicate democracy, then it is not for you. Dividends of democracy belongs to the people who can extract it. Human rights and civil liberties belongs to the people who insist, take and keep it. If you can't, it's simply not for you. So struggling to practice democracy is very healthy. We'll continue to encourage all of us. Nobody says that democracy is easy. They only didn't tell us how delicate it was. Without going into so much comparison, because I'm speaking in general terms, I'm not speaking about the 2023 elections now. So no minister will fly to New York and make any allegations against me. If you recall that 80s into the late 90s, there was this genuine globalization of democracy around the world. But then there is a certain part of the world with very old, rich culture and history, namely the Middle East. Whatever democracy is going to provide, the rulers have provided it. So why do we need it anyway? you are safe, you are wealthy, you're comfortable, even as an ordinary citizen. And democracy will never give it to you. So they were clever enough to stay away from democracy. In Africa, however, we democratized. And we saw in the case of Nigeria, what did democracy correspond with? Personal wealth. What happened to the nation? Insecurity, mismanagement, and the rest. I believe in democracy. I don't believe in dictatorship or, I say, kind of monarchy that is practiced elsewhere, even though they are proven to be good. I believe in democracy. But what I even believe in more is that it must be practiced well. What is democracy? It is not having 3 arms of government. What is democracy is the constitution. If you don't follow the constitution, you simply do not have democracy. That is the simple truth. Now, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is different from the Electoral Act. And I repeat, I'm not speaking about the 2023 presidential elections. I'm speaking about we, the people. I'm speaking about the supremacy of the Nigerian Constitution, which says that any law that is at variance with this Constitution is to the extent of that variance, null, void, and of no effect. I'm speaking about the Constitution that has provided how the judiciary shall exist, the armed forces shall exist, the Nigerian police shall exist, the National Assembly shall exist. I'm speaking about the Nigerian Constitution, which says what must happen for there to be a validly elected president. And then interestingly, I have spoken about the opposite or the failure to have those conditions fulfilled. I'm for now staying away from any controversy. I just want to speak about the fundamentals. Without a constitution, without abiding by a constitution, you do not have a democracy. Nothing will change this in the world. Constitutions come interpreted, they come simple, they come understandable, and they are to be followed, not to be disobeyed, and then ask wantonly for interpretation. Nobody has time to waste. Constitutions are meant to be followed. Right now, Constitution was followed in the judiciary, in the National Assembly, in the armed forces, in the police as they exist. The Constitution is to be followed, not to be interpreted, as far as the office of the president is concerned. So, Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is a different document. The Electoral Act is a different document. I respect the courts. My principal has gone to court. I am with him, and all that we're doing, we wait patiently for the courts to. But now, we, the people, have a problem. If your constitution is violated and you sit watching, democracy is not for you. Interpret it anyhow you want. If you, the people, we, the people, watch the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria violated, and the best we can do is respectfully to hold lectures, write UK government, all right, we'll receive your letters. Did you have more letters? Write and bring, they'll read your letters. Who told you democracy is easy? Nothing good comes in. As I speak to you, even though we're not in any way comparable, Israel, we the people, are getting into their 8th week of protest because they don't believe in certain policies of their prime minister. 2021 to 2022, Indian farmers sat and occupied a certain location in India for over 1 year because of an obnoxious agricultural policy that they did not believe in until their government removed that policy. Nigerians, your constitution is brazenly violated in broad daylight, and you're writing letters. Your cosmates in the assailing political parties are rigging elections, changing the meaning of your constitution, and you're writing letters and holding conferences. Well, democracy is yours. It's yours to take and build. It's yours to take and play with. Nigerians, our destiny is ours. You can't come here and scare the UK that refugees will come. Yes, they come from everywhere. A few more from Nigeria doesn't make a difference. That's not how to motivate them. Go and practice your democracy, and we'll meet you somewhere and make it work. Nigerians, go and make your democracy to work. Thank you. And then we have Nigerians who have become British. And then we have Nigerians who are British and live in Britain. And then we have those of you who are sensible enough to have run away when you could. So I greet all of you. So they gave me pretty broad latitude. I've been asked to speak to the subject. What was happening? What happened? What will happen? So when I didn't even realize that. I thought it was going to be a question and answer thing. But I saw these and I started asking myself. That was about 9. So what am I now supposed to say with all of this? So it made more and more sense as I kept listening to the different persons I spoke with before we started out. So those of you who speak the King's English, you pardon me. I'll struggle and try my best to make myself, let me borrow a Nigerian word, hearing. So what was happening? So I decided that I'll situate the question within the context of the theme. Nigeria on trial. Does democracy matter? So if you ask me what was happening, I imagine that you're asking what was happening with Nigerian democracy. So I will take it from that point. I think what was happening before now is that Nigerian democracy, and don't worry, we'll tie this up by the time we are coming to the end. I've got 20 minutes, I'm not likely to use it up, don't worry. I enjoy the time of my voice, so I'll keep it short. So what was happening is very simple. Prior to 2023 election, what has been happening since 1999 is that the Nigerian people have grown largely despondent about our democracy. We'll define it later, don't worry. Our democracy is peculiarly Nigerian. It's not the same as yours. So we will explain that. So what's been happening is that the people have lost interest. They abandoned it. It became a space that was abandoned largely to the people who have taken over that space today, the charlatans, those who do not have the interest of the Nigerian people. In fact, the only thing that you will not find on their mind are the interests of the people. And this is clearly evidenced by everything you see when you look around Nigeria. The putrefaction you see, the decadence, the extreme poverty in the midst of plenty, the complete lack of ambition, what would see in Nigeria was happening, and it was largely bedded in the pot of apathy. Now, that apathy was gutted out of a lack of faith in the system to deliver on its promise of free and fair election. That was one. But it was also found in the knowledge that the political class, and I stretch the bound of credibility when I use the word political and class in relation to the ruiners of Nigeria, it became evident to the people that regardless of which one of the parties happens to be in power, nothing ever changes about the lot of the people. It remained poor, it remained brutish, insecurity was normal. Whoever was in power, there was never going to be power. So the only thing that was certain for the Nigerian was that regardless of which one of the many political parties might be in power at any point in time, nothing was going to change. So in the midst of this, the Nigerians were generally disenchanted and disconnected from the system. In 2015, or in the lead up to the 2015 election, you had a coalition of men. I used to call them the thinking thieves and the unthinking thieves. The thinking thieves were generally those who were governing the state of Lagos. There is always a pretense that some work was being done. They would paint the bad roads, and they did a pretty good job of holding the press, influencing the press to give the impression that something was being done. So they were the thinking thieves. They would at least have a genuine budget, even though they would merely put the budget headings, and they would spend the money without doing the work. They would paint dilapidated buildings. They would build roads that do not exist. They will concession public properties without regard. They were the thinking thieves. They were the AC. And then you had the unthinking thieves who had 16 years in power and really didn't care much about anything, any thoughts. They didn't pretend that they were stealing. They were simply stealing. And in 2015, with the promise of change, the Nigerian people were deceived. The All Progressive Congress was formed, but the only thing progressive about that party has been the progression in stealing and the putrefaction of the Nigerian people. The complete dissipation of hope and the almost total loss of any illusion that Nigeria would be kept together without radical changes taking place. It took 7 years for the Nigerian people to come to the realization of the fact that something new had to happen. And that something new was what you saw in the lead up to the 2023 elections. The people of Nigeria took a decision to change things. So I come to the second part of what I've been asked to speak to. What happened? A coalition of the disadvantaged in Nigeria came together. When I say coalition, I'm speaking specifically to all the victims of Nigeria across the length and breadth of Nigeria. Because those who have benefited from the ruination of Nigeria come from across the length and breadth of Nigeria. They are not divided by ethnicity. They are not divided by religion. And they couldn't care less, sometimes even about gender. They are united in their purpose, and their singular purpose is the ruination of Nigeria to their own benefits and to the benefits of those who have aided them in the ruination of Nigeria. So what happened was that those who have for long been disadvantaged by the Nigerian mess began to realize the commonalities of their afflictions. And in the lead up to that election, several persons across the length and breadth of Nigeria, not even working together or in concert with each other, found commonalities. So a lot of us went out there and were convincing the people to go out and register to vote. The fact that the Nigerian state had exposed itself shamelessly on October 20, 2020 at Lekki Toll Gate, where it shamelessly murdered an untold number of Nigerian youth, helped to mobilize the youth to become interested in the election, because in the absence of the legitimacy of protests, peaceful protests, with the government making it clear that it has no shame or even any restraint about killing Nigerians, and the international community shamelessly looking on whilst this was happening without saying a word. And when it said anything, it merely whimpered in your parliament in Britain here. Togenad was busy telling us about how Gowon brought half of Nigeria's treasury to this country, telling us that Britain was effectively a recipient of stolen property. So that's another ballgame entirely. But the point is that we came to the realization of the fact that we are the ones who are going to have to sort out our own mess. So across the length and breadth of Nigeria, people got together in the knowledge that they had to do something. And they began to form little cells. And this happened on the 25th of February. Bola Ahmed Tinubu could not get 20% of the votes in Lagos State. That was what happened. That is a fact. No amount of oro that they might carry, and that man sat there wearing hat, pretending not to be here. Rosevive of Tinubu. He was the one who forced them to start carrying oro. That was the extent of their fear. That was fear. They were so afraid by the result they saw on the 25th of February that they were ashamed to bring out all manner of tribal and ethnic divisions, religious divisions, all manner of hatred were weaponized in broad daylight. The diplomatic community were there. Unashamedly, some of you in the diaspora were busy clapping this nonsense on. And I look at all of you and I wonder, how do you complain or speak or condemn racism if you, in your own country, if you in your own country cannot see another person as a wedge? That was what happened in Nigeria. So when you ask what happened, that was what happened. The people found the commonalities of their affliction and they delivered a crushing defeat to the ruling APC on the 25th of February. And after that happened, what then happened? INEC, under Professor Yakubu Mahmoud. These people will remember his name, but will not remember him for good. Because what he did is out there in the public space. Those who wish to theodorize the skunk might call it any other thing. But the truth of the matter is that the man in question most shamelessly compromised the integrity of Nigerian election. I was up and I witnessed the election. I voted around 8:43 on the day, PM. The election was tallied at my polling unit around 1:43 a.m. My fellow residents in my neighborhood brought generators, candles, and everything to ensure that INEC was able to do its job. Everybody did their job. The Nigerians, every one of us who did our job. The only people who failed us, INEC. That was what happened. So they now told me, said, so what will happen? To know what will happen, we have to address the fundamentals that His Excellency mentioned in passing. And fundamentals are important. I'm a Yoruba man. The Yoruba nation is a very old one. It precedes the Nigerian nation. And it's probably as old as the English. I'm proud to say that. My mask that is in your museum here, it's back before Christ. So let's be clear about that. And one of our fundamental proverbs says this. He says, you say to the crippled, your load is imbalanced. And he says, why are you looking to the load on my head? Why don't you address the imbalance at the base? What will happen? I'll tell you. Nigeria is not possessed of a constitution. You know, His Excellency was busy talking about the sanctity of the Constitution. Nigeria is not possessed of a Constitution. Nigeria is governed by a decree. It is known as Decree 24 of 1999. It was the parting gift of the military junta that rules Nigeria. The Constitution of Nigeria does not flow from the will of the Nigerian people. So the Nigerian is essentially not a citizen. He is a subject. Citizenship does not fall on your lap. It's a function of evolution. The British evolved their citizenship. And you have to go back into the Magna Carta, dating back to, I think, 10 something. I'm not sure. I think it's about 10. I'm not sure that it's been a long time since I took courses in jurisprudence, but I do know that the basis of English or British citizenship is in the Magna Carta. It restrains the powers of the king and it forces him to be accountable for his powers. Every power given by law is limited by law. When a power is given by law and is unlimited by law, it simply means that that society is ungoverned by law. Nigeria is not governed by law. We might pretend that it is, and we have done fantastically well for the last 24 years, pretending that we are a democracy that is governed by law. But Yorubas also say that when a house is calm, it is because the bastard in the house is not grown up. When the bastard is matured, the house is going to be upside down. What has happened is that the monster in the Nigerian household has grown up and has now become fully fledged. That constitution has always been a lie because it does not flow from the will of the people. It is a military imposition. That military imposition is what has come full circle. And the people now have to decide whether they are happy to live with the lie that is called the Constitution and the monster that it has battered that is called a democracy, but is more fittingly called a democracy. That is on one hand. What will happen? I'm not going to threaten you with the refugee problem. You want it. That's the truth. The British and the rest of the West, the entire world economy is predicated on the assumption of Africans. I'm sorry to say, but that is the reality. If we ever got our acts together in Nigeria, our best and brightest would not be in this country, slaving away at jobs that some of your people will not even take. We have brain drain, a major brain drain in my country. But you are the recipient and beneficiary of the very best and brightest of my countrymen. We send our children to come to school in your country and we train them at great expense. The money spent in Britain and other countries every year to train Nigerian children will be sufficient to fix all the problems in our educational system. But I just read that the Nigerian government has declared that it is incapable of sponsoring tertiary education. Question is, how many of the children of the Nigerian middle class, including myself, are to be found schooling within Nigeria? That is by design. It has taken our money to prop up the economy of the West. The idiocy of our rulers have assured that your countries are rich whilst we have remained poor. So I'm not here to ask Britain to help us. I don't expect you to help us. I expect no help. But I am here to let those of you who live in this country, Nigerians, who live here, you need to get up to the idea that you have been blessed and fortunate enough to escape the mess in our country, and you are here. You are in a society that works to an extent. It might not always be this, but it's working currently. Where we can talk, you can. When they might hold us down in Nigeria, you can force their partners here who pretend to care about us but do not really give anything. Because I'll remind you, and I'll round up with this because I realize I'm close to 20 minutes now. In the immediate aftermath of the NSAS protest, I was asked to attend a meeting with the Western diplomat. And after the meeting, I sat down I was trying to figure out exactly what the meeting was all about. And I realized that they were just worried about what we were likely to do and how it might affect their own business interests in Nigeria. So I realized that beyond the platitudes that might be offered by any Western or foreign powers, it is entirely up to us to find the solutions to our problems. So thank you for having these in Britain, since they are the ones who created the original mess called Nigeria. But solving the problem called Nigeria is entirely a Nigerian undertaking. How we do it is entirely dependent on us.
The election, and somehow also provoked a race war along the way. So clearly something is wrong here. If democracy is defined as government of the people, for the people, by the people, then a presidential candidate who was emphatically rejected by the people at the polls, whose age is 4 times the median age of Nigeria, so clearly this person is not demographically representative of the Nigerian population, and who believes that the presidency is his manifest destiny because it's his turn. How exactly is that democratic? The answer, of course, is that merely holding an election, something that closely resembles an election, only for it to announce a predetermined winner, regardless of what people have to say about it, is not democracy or anything close to it. As I mentioned when I started, even North Korea and China hold elections. There's nothing special about elections. In fact, North Korea's official name is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. But certainly none of you would suggest that the fact that it calls itself democratic and it holds elections makes it a democracy. Now, while other speakers will no doubt focus on the fallout of the disgraceful spectacle that we witnessed 3 months ago, that Nigeria's political establishment described euphemistically as an election, I'll only summarize my thoughts on those issues into the following brief points so that I can move on to something else that I want to talk about now. And these are the brief points. Now, as an investigative journalist with a key career focus on state capture, financial crime, and transnational crime, including cross-border drug and human trafficking, much of my work over the past year has comprehensively established that Mr. Bola Tinubu, supposed INEC president-elect, has in fact previously been involved in the trafficking of Southeast Asian heroin during his time in the city of Chicago, USA. Federal court records from the Eastern Division of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois clearly states that in 1993, Mr. Tinubu was forced to forfeit funds totaling $460,000 to the US government, being an asset forfeiture for illegal narcotics trafficking. Now, going further than the court records that were on file using subpoenas and FYA frameworks, I was also able to establish that Mr. Tinubu has told multiple lies about his background and committed multiple perjuries on his INEC EC9 declaration. The multiple lies told by Mr. Tinubu about his actual identity, his professional and educational background, and the obvious falsehoods presented on his presidential declaration form, including what I thought was the funniest thing of all, a blatantly forged Chicago State University certificate that had grammatical errors on it, which is easily traceable to a cheap online forgery service called diplomamakers.com. Make it clear that Mr. Tinubu is legally and morally unfit for office. Now, the illegality of declaring Mr. Tinubu the winner in the small hours of the morning at 4 a.m. when everyone was asleep, without any actual evidence of this supposed victory, an outcome that was not supported by any credible poll, and which INEC's own emerging data continues to contradict, makes a mockery of the credibility of Nigeria's Electoral Commission and calls into question the basic credibility of the electoral process. Now, a few weeks ago, as part of the testimony that I delivered to a UK parliamentary inquiry on a separate issue, I was asked to state what I believe the UK and its international partners should do about the situation in Nigeria, what I believe the consequences would be if these actions are not taken. Now, I know several of my co-speakers here have spoken very pointedly about the fact that the UK is not going to help, and the UK should not be viewed as the go-to entity here, but nonetheless, I was asked for my opinion, and I gave an answer, and this is what I said. So the following is an excerpt from the answer that I gave. I said, The international community needs to impose sanctions on individuals and organizations that have played and are playing key roles in destroying democracy in Nigeria through electoral malpractice and media narrative astroturfing and propaganda that assists the unapologetically fascist position being adopted by the ruling regime. In a manner similar to the targeted sanctions adopted against senior members of Zimbabwe's ZANU-PF regime for violating the human rights of Zimbabweans, senior figures in Nigeria's executive, legislative, and judiciary should be made to face targeted economic and travel sanctions that would bar them from doing business, owning property, or seeking healthcare in countries like the UK. These sanctions should also be extended to family members of sanctioned individuals, preventing them from acting as their economic proxies and from obtaining healthcare or education in these countries. If no action is taken, my assessment is that Nigeria as a whole will become fundamentally destabilized when the sharp divide between the leadership and the people becomes impossible to mitigate or work around. Demographically, Nigeria is already one of the most divided countries on earth, with a national median age of just 18.1 years old, alongside an aged, incompetent, out-of-touch leadership class, typified by the incoherent octogenarian who is currently prepped to illegally assume the country's highest office later this month. Willfully ignoring the clearly expressed will of the Nigerian people will inevitably lead to social unrest and instability, especially among the youth who are disproportionately affected by the problems that this very class of wannabe dictators created. This was a very important part of my submission, and I want you to listen. This kind of chaos has already been foreshadowed in parts of urban Nigeria over the past 4 years. These events are now remembered individually as the reprisal attacks against South African businesses in 2019, because the so-called 1 million boys gang violence during the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020, and the NSAS protest later in the same year. But when examined in context, they are not standalone events. They are a growing pattern, each one more serious than the last. If the pattern persists, we will not be considering a Nigerian civil conflict or a West African regional crisis, but a major global humanitarian catastrophe will engulf Africa and Europe. It is important to remember that essentially all of Nigeria's 200 million residents are basically 2 national borders and 1 British Mediterranean crossing away from Europe. The total destabilization of the country with that many people, a stone's throw away from Lampedusa and Calais, would fundamentally reshape Africa, Europe, the UK, possibly the entire world as we know it, not in a good way. So those are my words to Parliament a few weeks ago. And I have an addendum. It is that if the UK actually has a commitment to promoting democracy in Nigeria and promoting good leadership in Nigeria the way it says it does, then we need to demonstrate that commitment by refusing to allow the very kleptocrats and criminals who subvert Nigeria's democracy from obtaining political legitimacy here, parking their money here. A few days ago, a Bloomberg investigation exposed the existence of a Nigerian state corruption enterprise involving the proceeds of oil theft, which were laundered through the purchase of a mansion here in London. The buyer of said property turned out to be the son of President-elect, who at the ripe old age of 31, and without any substantial or well-defined source of income, somehow paid $11 million cash for the mansion on Grove End Road, a few miles north of here. Now, we can hold all the parliamentary inquiries we want, we can host press conferences like this from now to cows come home, but actions will always speak louder than words. If the UK, through its silence or inaction, demonstrates that its stated commitment to entrenching democracy and promoting good leadership in Nigeria is just talk, well, the reality is that if and when Nigeria's youthful population eventually finds its way in the world, potentially becomes a larger trading and diplomatic partner, we will remember who our friends were in our times of adversity. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Now, my final words are aimed directly at the elements in Nigeria's political, judicial, and security establishment who, if they are not central to it, are enabling this brazen attempt to end all meaningful democracy as we know it in Nigeria, because I know they're watching this. Now, 14 years ago, in 2009, I remember I was watching TV and there was a breaking story that came on, and it was this story about some Nigerian guy who tried to blow up transatlantic flights using plastic explosives sewn into his underwear. It became an internet meme at the time, the underpants bomber. Now, at the time, as Nigerians, I was in university and I was in University of Hull. There was a bit of a fallout there. His cousin also happened to be at the University of Hull. His cousin wasn't able to come back to the UK because he traveled for the Christmas. But at the time, to us, all we were worried about was maybe like potentially there'll be a bit more visa scrutiny, maybe some people will refuse visas. But the concept of a Nigerian suicide bomber was just so unheard of to us that it became material for like Facebook viral comedy videos and basketball punchlines at 90,000 laughs. Imagine a whole Nigerian blowing himself. Nigerians that love life so much. It was very fun. And then in 2011, it happened again. This time in Abuja, 27 people died. Then it happened again in Madala. It happened in Kadaka. It happened in Damaturu. It happened in Jos. It happened in Maiduguri. And it stopped being fun. The deaths piled into hundreds, and almost overnight, Nigerian suicide bomber went from being some sort of ethereal joke punchline to becoming a very real thing that we saw on pages of Punch and Manga newspaper. Those Facebook viral videos from 2009 stopped loading. The comedian stopped mentioning suicide bomber. Now, why am I telling you this story? The thing about established orders is that they count on their own inertia. They don't believe that things can or will never actually change until they do. Legend has it that during the fall of Rome, right at the moment when the barbarians were overrunning the gates of the city's legislators were locked in a debate on the subject. If a fly falls into holy ointment, is the ointment then tainted, or does the fly become holy? And then, of course, the barbarians broke in and the question didn't matter. The thing is, no matter how elastic the people might be, there is always a breaking point. You just haven't found that breaking point yet. If you've been paying attention, the signs are already there. I mentioned earlier that the 2019 and 2020 riots in Lagos, which came before EndSARS, were both part of an escalating pattern. What I did not mention was that the next time young Nigerians hit the streets, they will do so fully expecting you to shoot them down as you did during EndSARS, which means that they will have nothing to lose, which makes them infinitely more dangerous. In case you still don't understand what the 2023 election was and is, you should see it as one final opportunity to exit relatively gracefully and leave the young people whom you have failed, hopefully, to clean up the mess that you created. That is all they've asked for with their votes, and you still have the opportunity to avoid making a bigger mess. It's not too late for you to make things right, but having said that, if history is any judge, we know what you're most likely to do. And if it happens that way, well, I've spent 10 minutes explaining how it will inevitably end for you, for us, for Nigeria. And we don't pray for it to happen, but if it does, maybe we'll host another press conference.
Wonderful young man. Every time I look at this young man, I see a future for Nigeria. Yes. Every time I look at this young man, I see a future for Nigeria. It reminds me, quite frankly, I don't want to talk about this country. This is my country as well. But it reminds me of people like Tony Blair, and every time I look at him, I say, yes, Nigeria has a future. I'm talking about future. There's a parent here who has been talking to his children about this conference and that Your Excellency, Senator Yusuf Datti Ahmed is coming. And the children said, Daddy, you must take us there. You must take us there. So when he came to me and said, the children actually said, yes, they want to go and greet Your Excellency. I said, okay, I will have to I need permission from the Excellency for them to come. But please, where are the kids? These are the future of our country. Please, parents, do this always to our children, the future of our country. They have a lesson at 5 o'clock and they left school. They are still in their school uniform. They left school that they want to meet Your Excellency. Please, all the paparazzis and photographers, please. And I think they are twins, by the way. Yes. Please, paparazzi, photos, please. Yes. 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 Wonderful children. Please, parents, let's do this to our children. The future for Nigeria is bright. It's really, really bright. And when I look at these children, I just see that light shining at the end of the tunnel for our nation. Yes. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Caesar.
When I grow up, I want to be like Senator Datti Ahmed, that they are coming to greet. Can you go greet me, please? World briefing, press briefing. And the leader who was making the speech didn't know he had jumped 2 pages. And the press started murmuring the line. He said, but that is not a laughing matter. He didn't even know that he had jumped 2 pages in his speech. That is kind of tragic for himself. Because some speeches are written, and let's just carry it and be looking at it. Gone are the days of speeches that are written by other people. We have candidates who speak from their hearts. And that's why Nigerians follow them. And I ask myself again, here is somebody who won an election. The presidential candidate lost his state. The chairman lost his state. The president himself lost his state. The most viable cities in Abuja, in Nigeria, Abuja and Lagos, you lost it. So where are you popular? Have you asked yourself that? If you're not popular in Abuja, really, you're not popular because every Nigerian combines Lagos and Abuja. So I'm going to introduce our sister here, another lady who has done very well. You know that a lot of things happen at Chatham House. Nigerians have really been pushing. It's so unfortunate what leadership subjects Nigeria to. And the people who represent Nigeria here, including Senator Datti himself, they have been bullied, called all sorts of names because they wanted to do things right. And our sister here also has been taking a lot of jabs for trying to be fair, upright, challenging the status quo. And I know she's going to go places. Join me in welcoming Dr. Loretta Oduwari.
Thank you very much to one of the most hardworking men I've met. Good afternoon, or is it evening now? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed, and good afternoon to my fellow speakers on the high table. My name is Loretta Oduwari, and I come from a state where we say that we share the 10th kingdom with the United Kingdom, Edo State. That's where you have the second kingdom in this world. And what pains me the most is that sometimes I have to take my daughter to the British Museum to see our own heritage as a people. But I have come to England and I have been a first generation migrant. And every day I give my best and my all to England, which is now my host country. I still remember what is happening in my own home nation, which is the source country for all forms of would I call it labor in quote, and even to a large extent, contemporary slavery. Because if you are here as a doctor, as a barrister, as a journalist, there is still that thing that happens, and you know that somewhere someone is making a glass. Do we want to abandon our home on the altar of our host nations? Or do we want to get our host nations galvanized so that they take the reins and actually help us fix our own nations? With that, I'm going to say a big well done to all those who have organized this conference today. I want to thank people who have traveled from afar and come here to come and actually amplify the voices of Nigerians. As it crossed our minds that in every population, there is a critical mass. That critical mass is very, very minuscule. That critical mass is tiny. Today, we have the critical mass of Nigeria in this room. And importantly, the critical mass drives the majority. So I'm telling us today that our 200 million strong population is actually depending on us to amplify their voices and let the world know what we know, what has happened. I've been asked to speak in this conference today about Nigeria's democracy being on trial. And specifically, I was told to speak of Nigeria in the labor room. The world is watching. I don't know if the organizers chose that term because they found a consultant of obstetrician and gynecologist, or whether they just, were led by the spirit. But I will try and do it justice. In my experience as an obstetrician and gynecologist, pregnancy and labor are processes. However, they are processes that are physiological and processes that are manned by nature in a way that nature does not want anything to go wrong. That's the truth. Nature wants to achieve a decent pregnancy and a delivery where mother and child is alive and well. That's nature. And people look forward to pregnancy and labor with great expectations. However, since gaining our own independence in 1960 from the British, Nigeria has been pregnant. We've been pregnant with potentials and with promises. We've been pregnant with ideas. We've been pregnant with all the good things in our mind. But we've had an inertia to go into labor and beg and deliver this pregnancy. Through military coups and successive governments, we have underperformed. And all of these hydra-headed challenges have made our country to become one in a gestational state of growth restriction. However, enter 2023. And in 2023, what happened? Nigeria went into labor with the presidential election of February 25th. It was a unique time in the history of our beloved country. For the second time in Nigeria's history, citizens were not seeing religious divide. Citizens were not seeing ethnic divide. Citizens were not seeing age divide. Citizens were united by a common front. Nigerians took their destinies in their own hands and we headed to the polls. The distinctive characteristics of 2023 is well documented in databases that are public. There was a swelling of all our registered voters. There was increased engagement. And even when I went to the polling unit, I saw my countrymen. I saw my countrywomen. What happened? They came with their water bottles. They came with their chargers. They came with musical instruments. They were determined to stay there and see the end of the counting. They believed in INEC. Nigerians have come to a realization of what my father always told me when I was growing up, that it is only Nigerians that can change Nigeria for Nigerians. We may have the help of other people. We may have them aid us, but we must overcome that inertia. We are in labor. We must bet our democracy. And Nigerians did not shy away from this. The world waited. The world looked. We looked forward to the betting and delivery of our true democracy with great expectations. Africa held her breath as the words of Nelson Mandela echoed in our hearts, that the world will not respect Africa until Nigeria earns respect. The black people of the world need Nigeria to be great as a source of pride and confidence. But what happened? Alas, there was a midwife in this labor process. The process was supposed to be midwifed by an independent body, as their name is called, the Independent National Electoral Commission. However, this very same midwife scuttled the delivery of true democracy and created what we call in obstetrics and gynecology an obstruction in the labor process. The process had come to a halt due to no fault of the mother, in this case, Nigeria. Nor was the child not ready to be better. But somebody had put in an obstruction somewhere. Going by the results of many Nigerians like me and my sister here and everybody on this table, and many of the Nigerians who are watching everywhere in the world today, and those of us who were in the field, electoral materials were coming at 2 p.m. Egbon said it. Dele Farotimi. I was there. In my polling group, they came at about 1:30. Every step of the way, an obstacle was put to scuttle Nigerians. And then the promises of INEC, they came to naught. The portals for announcing results, transmission of results, all of them came to naught. A constitutional crisis has arisen just from the fact that the midwife in this whole process has decided not to entertain violence for Nigerian lives. However, the birth of a new Nigeria is what we'll see in the Obidient movement and the things that have been happening. It may be stalled, there may be an obstruction, but it cannot be aborted. This new Nigeria is only being delayed. And today we look to the Nigerian judiciary to continue the midwifery process. They have now taken it away from those who were supposed to be independent, who were fully dependent. What they were dependent on, you can guess. A new Nigeria is going to arise. And today we are saying to the international community that they have a role to play. Some of us may disagree, but they do have a role to play. We cannot be some of the numbers that swell their biggest migrant workforce and they want to make life unbearable for our relatives at home. What will happen is that we will not provide proper services even in these countries. They must help us to magnify what it means for Nigerians to bet true democracy. They cannot be ostriches burying their necks in the sand in this process. The kind of true democracy that played itself out in December in this country. Our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was wishing this country Merry Christmas. And somebody pointed it out that he was not wearing his silk belt. The constitution swung into action. Rishi Sunak was fined and Rishi Sunak paid the fine. Yes. work. So why should we turn a blind eye? And I tweeted right back to my Prime Minister when he congratulated current government select. I told him, we in Nigeria are pushing to have this kind of democracy where your people will tell you that, Prime Minister, you have breached the law. You apologize and you pay the fine. You brought us democracy. You must help us see to a logical conclusion. You cannot turn your face to the current constitutional crisis going on in Nigeria. The 200 million strong population of Nigeria are asking what has happened to the birthing of our mandate. And those of us who are going for sub-national government roles in Nigeria, in the next dispensation in our states, are asking, if this can happen at the presidential level, what hope do we have at the grassroots? To bet a new Nigeria into existence, the judiciary, we must look at the example where we find that there's the existence of the judiciary, there's the existence of the armed forces. And we should use these precedents because these bodies exist governed by our constitution. These bodies are better, not subject to constitutional interpretation. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody watching, the election of the president cannot be subject to interpretation either, but must strictly be provided for by the law as it is interpreted in our constitution. So, the labor room is being keenly watched by the whole world, this labor room of Nigeria, and our judiciary, who has taken over the battle to resolve the current constitutional crisis, are being watched. They have to indeed rise up to this occasion. And the Western world, who plays host to most of Nigeria's migrant population, either legal or illegal migration as the case may be, will have a lot to lose if Nigerians are displaced, if Nigerians are not mentally stable. So they must build their searchlight on this constitutional process resolution that is going on by our judiciary. I will modify the words of JFK and say, he did tell us, he said, democracy is not perfect and freedom has got difficulties. But all this said, we've never had to put up a wall to keep our people in. We are not going to put up a wall to keep in the betting process and the delivery of Nigeria's democracy. It may look like chaos right now. It may look.
But do not look to the British or to any part of the West for our solutions. It is entirely in our own hands. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, good afternoon. Good afternoon, my fellow panelists, and good afternoon to you all that have taken the time to make it. What a privilege, what an honor to stand before you, even more so to even speak today. For me, it's an especially very special privilege. Some of you will know that if you're familiar with my work. Today is a great day for me. It's a mighty, great season. So I was asked to speak on the subject matter, the unsaid words, the greatest threat to democracy. For me, that's very simple. So I'm going to take us to 2013. In 2013, here in London, we were all having so many conversations about Nigeria, how we wanted to make changes. We gathered, that was before Zoom, so we gathered in person, here, there, and everywhere. And I remember one day, I came home and I just thought, we're constantly doing this. Some people are talking about, let's put up a website. Others are saying, let's do that. And I came home. I said, Father, what do we do? How are we going to do this? And I just heard, start from the beginning. What is the beginning? The Constitution. And I was thinking, thank you for real. Anyway, I was working with Joint Television, as some of us So I got into the office and I approached Alistair Shirley, the CEO, and I said, sir, I have an idea. Can we discuss the Constitution on TV on a weekly basis? I didn't want to do it myself. I wanted to find someone else to do it. And he said, you have to do it. And I said, okay, but I have no funding. And he said, so I said, can I have some time? He said, if you don't do it now, I'll take away the airtime. I thought it was a joke. So I carried myself, I prepared myself the very next week. I got me a constitutional lawyer based here. She used to teach that in Nigeria. She very graciously agreed to come. And on a weekly basis, we discussed the content of the Constitution. So guess what happened? Nigerians will call in and Nigerians will say, Priscilla, that Constitution, we the people didn't gather. So what difference does it make? Others will say, well, so what do you want us to do now that you've given us this information? I will have engineers, doctors, all manners of Nigerians call in because it was a live program. They would dismiss me. They would tell me whatever they wanted to tell me. Others will say, okay, so you mean this or you mean that? You mean this is in the Constitution, you mean that's in the Constitution? And I said, yes, it is in our Constitution. And one of the things I said to everybody was, it is our primary governing instrument. So whether we were there, we were not there, it is what they say they are using to rule us. So if you want to make changes, you need to understand what it says, and you need to be able to understand it, because if they are standing on it, you need to be able to use it yourself and stand on it. Without it, we're wasting time. I've often been dismissed. So that brings me to my point today. The greatest threats to democracy. We define democracy, at least when I was at school. Democracy for the people, by the people, of the people, right? In the Nigerian case, our greatest threat is the people. The people because we don't participate. We don't participate because we do not understand the tenets of democracy. We don't understand the tenets of democracy, we fold our arms. We fold our arms and we watch. We do not dare to hold any of our leaders to account, because as far as we are concerned, they are the senior man, he holds a position. I'm regarded as, have been called all kinds of things because I ask questions that people are uncomfortable with. So if I dare to ask a question, I am a woman, who does she think she is? She's so rude, she's stubborn, she thinks she's better than everybody. Those are just some of the terms. And of course, when we come to the Nigerian groceries, then she's a prostitute, don't mind her. I have, amongst my peers, they will say, oh Priscilla, why would you ask such a question? And I'll say, are we okay here? Is your head functioning accordingly? What have I said that is not in the public domain? What are we afraid of? I don't need to insult anybody, I don't need to abuse anybody, but I should be able to ask a question. I am not asking because I want to humiliate or embarrass you. I am asking because it's necessary. But I've been called names for it. That's one aspect of how we fail ourselves. We fail our society. We fail our families. We fail the country. We are the greatest threat. Because of our lack of interaction with what our rules are, with what we're supposed to interact, we don't question because we were brought up to respect. And as soon as somebody holds a position, we dare not question them. So even when we come to a faraway Obodo Yibo, as we will say, we take that with us in the abroad. Whilst we're here in the United Kingdom and the United States, we understand democracy and the tenets of democracy, and we know what to expect when we ask all the questions. But when our Nigerian politicians come into town, we revert and we bow and we dare not ask questions. We are the problems. Because we are that threat to democracy, our democracy ensures that we continue to choose leaders that has zero consideration for our interest. And we're so bound by us, our beliefs, our tribal associations, and what we're going to get, our greed and our corruption, that we choose these leaders as long as it's our tribe's person. I remember in 2015, God, I came under all kinds of fire. I once lost an opportunity because somebody said she's a member of PDP, and they all agreed, simply because, as far as I was concerned, I didn't believe in the change that was being offered in 2015. I didn't see it. A lot of us here, we joined forces, just like Dele told us earlier, and we broke the law. We broke our own constitution when we said it was okay for somebody to assume a position that they didn't qualify for. We've been doing it 2015. You go back as far as our wonderful democracy, we've been constantly saying you can hold the office. We're happy to break our constitution. It's not a problem. We're okay with it. Suddenly today, we're no longer okay with that. And we expect them to clap for us, to say, oh yeah, sure, just take it and walk away. No, they're not. So our leadership is a problem because we created it. The other problem we have is a question of trust. We don't have trust. Our problem with trust is not just from the fact that we break our own constitutions, we choose the worst leaders or whatever else it is. It goes a little deeper than that. Our issues with trust, we don't trust one another. We live in a world where the structures are such that it prevents us from being able to see each other as one, work together. We don't give each other the same benefit of the doubt that we might give somebody else of a different race. And that runs right deep, even when we're back in Nigeria, when we're speaking about the issues of Nigeria. So the question of trust is big. Thus, right now, even though I believe that we're at that point today where Nigeria is changing, whether we like it or yes. I'm about to say something that might offend some men in the room, but please don't take it personal. I'm just going to state some of the things I hear over and over and over, and it's often from young men. And that's because they've lost hope. And they say to me, Priscilla, Nigeria is too difficult to govern. And then I ask myself, I ask them, why? Is it because we all have two heads? They say, democracy cannot work in Nigeria. I say, why wouldn't it work in Nigeria? We're not human beings. What's the difference? Why do you have such little value for yourself that you don't believe in the change, that you can make the change? So I'm not the only one speaking here today. So I'm going to try and round up. Because we lack understanding of what the tenets of democracy is. We don't understand our institutions can still work in our favor. And right now, everybody has given up to an extent. I have to say something. First of all, I don't belong to any political party, not even here in the United Kingdom. I used to vote a certain way. And then when I realized that actually they weren't really interested in me, I stopped voting for them. And I started voting for a much smaller party because I checked out their policies and I liked it. And And people will say, but they're never going to win. I can't give my vote to something I don't believe in. So, when we begin to understand the tenets of democracy, when we begin to stand up, I have to give credit to the Obedients. The Obedients are making my dreams come true. I have to salute every Obedience out there, because as far as I'm concerned, my dreams are coming true. Every Monday, some of you may have heard me on the radio, may have heard me on TV. You know, I always stand alone, and I don't care who likes it, who doesn't, who's going to attack me, who's not going to attack me. I say what I say because I think it needs to be said. So right now, we are practicing democracy, believe it or not. Democracy is being practiced for the first time, at least in my own, since I've lived in the United Kingdom for plenty many years. And over the last, say, 10 or so, I've been more and more involved or interested and connecting with Nigeria and Nigerian politics. And so over this period of time, I can tell you that we're actually starting to practice democracy. How are we doing that? The Obedients are standing up. They're asking questions. The Obedients are, my greatest joy on a daily basis is just going on Twitter and just reading the conversations about the petitions that are being put up, are being discussed. We're discussing our constitution for a change. We're discussing aspects of the law. We're discussing whether or not this works and that doesn't work. And that's what we should have been doing all of this while, because if we were, we wouldn't be here. However, I do think we needed to go through the Buhari in order for us to be here. Had we continued to have it as we had before, we wouldn't be here. So today we're finally engaging with our constitution. We're finally questioning our constitution. We're finally realizing that it gives you something with one hand, it takes it away with the other. If there's one profession after pastoral that is very common in Nigeria, lawyers. But how do? We seldom engage with the things we need to engage with. So when we understand that nobody's going to fight for us, when we understand that for Nigeria to change, we have to make those changes, when we understand that in order for us to have the new Nigeria of our dreams, it takes me, it takes you, it takes our children, it takes every Nigerian that we know standing together in oneness. Forgive me, I'm about to say something, and I'm probably going to upset a few people, but I don't get it. For the first time in our election process, we actually had viable candidates, right? Whether it was Kwankwaso, Peter Obi, we actually had viable candidates. This is what I don't understand. How can educated Nigerians, we're very quick to announce how many degrees that goes from here to there, we never stop studying, eminent Nigerians, say to their fellow educated Nigerians that we should tell the man that we're told came third, who is happy to go to court, but we're being told to go, the guy with the longest rap sheet that I've ever come across, nothing makes sense. Every day there's an addition, and it's not good. There are no real explanations. There are no denials. There are nothing. So it's fair to say we can accept it to be what it is. But you have eminent, highly educated Nigerians that will be so quick to shove their many degrees down your throat if you dare to not reach them properly. Say, let's beg the guy that came third, that has a clean record, so that we can all submit to this rap shit. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I will never understand it. I will never understand it. If there was an explanation for it, maybe somebody make it make sense to me. It does not make sense. But highly eminent, educated people, I'm concerned by that. I don't know about you all, but I'm concerned about that. We did it in 2015. We did, remember? And if we do it again, we're breaking the Constitution by ourselves. If we stand together, if we do what the Obedients are doing, the Obedients are holding everybody to account. The Obedients are speaking directly. Listen, I remember one day, it was during the Bring Back Our Girls. I was at the Foreign and Commonwealth office. I was sitting there for a meeting. And we broached off into a conversation about how they had reached out for Nigeria to help. They wanted to help. I looked at them and said, why do you need to help? I said, look, we're old enough. We should be able to take care of our problems. If we're not old enough, if we're not capable of taking care of our problems and we have an issue, it's not for the British to step in. Everybody's face just kind of changed because that wasn't what they were expecting me to say. So as Sir Dele said, he doesn't believe in calling the British to come and help. I'm sure some of you have heard me. It gets on my last nerves when I see Nigerians doing that. However, one thing I will say is that in the time and the season that we're in, I'm starting to see this a little differently. Let's not beg. Let's put them on notice that we don't like what's happening in our country and we don't want that to continue. Because I think when we put them on notice and they realize that there are so many of us who are aware, because one of the other things that is a great threat to democracy is when people have no knowledge of what's going on. When the powers that be understand that you and I are not concerned, we're not interested, we don't know what they're doing, we're not paying attention. They make changes. It's happening right now here in the United Kingdom as you and I speak, since COVID. Laws are being made under our very nose and eyes and we don't know. It's taking away our liberty. But most of us are dead to it, so they're getting away with it. The democracy we think we're enjoying here, it will take the grace of God if we're not all prisoners very soon. But the good thing is, we're putting everybody on notice to say, we don't want this in Nigeria. And as long as we can continue with that, the more voices that are raised on a daily basis, whether it's to retweet something, whether it's to add your voices to the call, we don't want this. We have to do it publicly because then they get the message. The people are awake because that's what this is, an awakening. So I'm going to round off because I think I've overspoken. And I just want to say that we can no longer make excuses. We can't come this far and go back. I've read that petition. I've read the various petitions. And I've never come across such a strong petition before the Nigerian judiciary. Make no mistakes, change is here. And we must all remember this. It is our problem. I say this every Monday evening. I would have said it tonight if I was back there in good time. I say it every Monday evening on a little radio program. It's our problem. Oh, let me tell you something else about that program. So in 2015, we fought ferociously. They fought me, I fought back. They told me I didn't know what I was talking about. I told them what this administration will be for each and every one of us. And I left them with this. I said, I just hope. I said, my sadness is we're all going to suffer in it. And I just hope that we'll be able to recover. Some said, we don't care if it's a dog. They told me that live on air. They said they didn't care. So here we are today. That program used to be so active. Everybody used to call in and we'd be talking back and forth. They can't call in. People are too embarrassed. I don't mind. They're too embarrassed to call in. They feel that, they can't engage with me because they can't get over the fact that it is happening. Just as I said. And they've lost so much that some of them, their lives, some of them, lives of their relatives, some of them, everything they ever owned. Recovery is tough for them. So they don't call back anymore, but they listen quietly. So I'm just going to stop there and say that it's our problem. We can fix it. Let's do that. Thank you for listening.
Here's another round of applause for Datti Ahmed. Some of us remember one word manufactured by the Nigerian politician. They call teamship. Beautiful word. And somebody asked the question that led to that teamship. And I want to salute the last speaker because you all asked, how are you going to fix it? He said, I'm going to do it with teamship. A round of applause for this. And she said, the unseen things, that's the most dangerous thing. Whenever they're telling you, don't go there, don't go there, why are we running away from the facts? I know some of us, the movie watchers, there's one film called A Few Good Men. General, they're not telling us the truth. The truth is I cannot handle the truth. Can we handle the truth? I think the Obidient have been able to see the truth. And they're handling it. A round of applause for them. I know some people that spent about 3 million naira to travel just to cast one vote. Nigerians are participating. It's time. The real change is the one we are getting. Please help me welcome our beloved brother. They call him GRV. It's popular because he did what people never thought was possible. And I want to call him to come and just greet people. That stood firmly against time. He lost his followers, standing firm and not giving. Thank you. They call him Chill. I don't know where you have the name.
But I'm very happy to be here. And I thank you, first of all, for getting involved, for choosing to see this as our problem. And once we've identified what the problem is, we are at least halfway towards getting a solution. So I thank you for choosing not to play ostrich the way generations before us have, and have given us this problem which we now have to solve. So thank you, thank you, thank you. For me, I feel that this election, I cannot be more proud of the generation that I went into this election with. This is my third election. The first I contested for local government chairman under Kowa Party. And I remember I would go and talk to people and you ask them how many people are registered and less than 10% of the whole of the voters cards. And then you see a remarkable jump where people decided that they were no longer leaving politics to politicians. You had a situation where young people were mobilizing by themselves without being mobilized. You had a situation where, October 1st, we shook Nigeria. And this was done without any massive mobilization of funds or resources. So whatever, And like His Excellency said, democracy and this journey is not something that is gotten easy, right? When the Heaven Macaulay started fighting for independence, it was not his generation that experienced the benefits of it or the actual recovery and independence of the Awolowos and the Nnamdi Azikiwes. So it's a journey. The most important thing is what we're doing now, which is persistence, consistency, staying on the ball, not going into the dark quietly. And that's what they want. They want you to stop tweeting. They want you to go on holiday. They want you to be quiet. But that's not going to happen. And I'm going to say that I want you to be encouraged. We made history, right? We brought back the idea that ideas matter in politics. We brought back the notion that, integrity, competence, and capacity matters. It's no longer about how many thoughts you have or how much you can use to buy votes, right? And that's never going to be erased out of these streets. What we now need to do is increase our self-influence. Because more than anything now, more and more people are empathetic towards the Labour Party, towards this idea movement, this idea of, we want people that don't have baggage, we want people that will vote for, we don't have to hold our nose or ignore their crimes, right? And this is only going to get bigger because more and more people are going to be inspired to come out and participate in elections that would not normally have come out before. Because now there's a huge group of people that want their leader to be somebody they can be proud of. And that's not going to change. When the mind has been expanded, it cannot go back to its previous size. People have seen it, they know it, they know what quality leadership sounds like, what quality leadership feels like. You cannot take that back, right? So we are the now, we are the future. And when we talk about democracy, yes, I understand the flaws of our constitution. And yes, I understand the flaws of the entire process and everything that has happened. But for me, I always make decisions based on hope. And more than anything, I've seen people stand up. I mean, like Mr. Farotimi said, they have started talking about Oro on the Tuesday before the election on Saturday. When they moved the elections, the Oba postponed the Oro. If you are not Yoruba, you might not, if you are not Yoruba, I come to you. And yes, my name is Dele Farotimi, but I did not tell anyone to add anyone. Unlike some, we actually have a birth certificate. What I would say is that if you know about Oro is a right that used to cleanse the land, and it's done at night. And it's only engaged the people that belong to the Oro cult are the only ones that can see it. So when you see traditional institutions doing something during the day, you realize the extent of their desperation. And even with all of that, people still came out. And these people were not bought. I'm coming from a party where millions of dollars are shared the night before. They've put all the money in the local government, who are coming, they're taking their own. This did not happen. It did not happen. So, for the first time, we're starting to get to a situation where equations are balanced in the sense of, okay, the typical people that come out to harvest their voters card every 4 years, get their money, and the people that actually want a new Nigeria, a better country, they are now coming out. So the equation is starting to be balanced. And I tell people, the best kept secret is the people that want a better Nigeria far outweigh and outnumber the ones that want to collect. That's right. They just need to see a viable candidate that they can believe in that will take the country where they need to go. And they found that in this election. That's why it's the kind of numbers that we got. So for me, we have gone to court. I believe that we
we have very good cases. And even, let's even say, for some reason, I was with His Excellency Peter Obi before I came. So I'm like, together. I said, don't travel out of this country for too long. People must be seeing you, they must be feeling you, going out and all. So this is not the politics of you go and then come back. So no, we're going for proper shadow government. We're going to be going at their policies while the court case is going on. And by God's grace, we'll stay in my victorious court. But this is the thing. It's human beings that put these constitutions together with all its flaws. And it's human beings that are going to change it. We must make sure the human beings that change it are the ones that we put into office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Please, another round of applause for GRB, please. Well, we told you that we had surprise speakers. And ladies and gentlemen, Balibo is one of our surprise speakers today. Please, another round of applause for him. Now, I said speakers, I didn't say speaker. So we've got another surprise for you. Now, before I introduce this surprise that is coming, I read an article, I think this was May, I think the article was published in April. I read it and I'm like, wow, this is huge. And what I did, I used my computer voice audio to read the message. Now, this message was about and when I finished that work at that time, I shared it with one of my friends, Engineer Leonardo Bibi, and the man said, no, don't do this. Any publicity is good publicity. And I said, okay, I won't share it. But looking back, that was a big mistake. That was a huge mistake for a man who forfeited $460,000 in 1990, whatever. You know how much that is? The money just found its way into his account, and then, it's not me, it's my account. I don't know how the money got there. Now, this article I'm talking about was written by a formidable journalist. This journalist, fortunate for us today, I'm proud to associate with this young man. He's here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us with a rounding applause. I know you know him. Please welcome David Hundeyin to the microphone.
Thank you. Don't have much of a speaking point. We'll get through this. So, good afternoon. My name is Hundeyin, and before I get started, I want to go quickly to piece of audience participation. So, with a show of hands, please indicate whether you've ever heard of a tool following entity. So, the first is called the.
So, guys, you have heard it for yourself. Datti Ahmed is that man that speaks gently, but his words are witty. And you know, the Nigerian politicians don't like to hear him speak because he's a fearless man. He fears nobody. And you know, he says it the way it comes out from his heart. He doesn't have any apology. He doesn't have any regrets. So, guys, and I hope you enjoyed listening to him. And I know you must have picked one or two things from those that spoke. I know you enjoyed this session, no doubt. And I hope you are going to subscribe to my channel. Please support me, subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell. Please give this video a like so that YouTube can recommend it to others. And let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you.